police are keeping up their search for a missing mother in Massachusetts.
Anna Walsh disappeared 11 days ago, and since then, investigators found blood and a knife in the family's basement.
On December 31st, 2022, a seemingly idyllic New Year's Eve dinner turned into a sinister nightmare. Behind the doors of their Lavish, Massachusetts home, a shocking crime unfolded, shattering the facade of the Walsh family's perfect life. Anna Walsh, a successful businesswoman and devoted mother of 3, vanished without a trace. Her husband, Brian Walsh, reported her missing, but investigators soon uncovered a web of deceit and horror. Let's examine the unsettling case of Anna Walsh's disappearance. Anna Walsh, born in Belgrade, Serbia, was a successful and affluent woman who was married to Brian Walsh for over 7 years. She was a multilingual, approachable, and responsible individual who rose through the ranks of the hospitality management field. Anna's mother, who was close to her, was unaware of the danger she was in. She attended the prestigious Belgrade Research University and obtained a master's degree in French language and literature. Anna worked in high-end hotels and gained respect for her warmth, approachability, and responsibility. She was promoted to senior manager and fell in love with head chef Marcus O'Neill at the Wheatley Hotel in Lenox, Massachusetts. They married in 2009. Brian Paul Walsh, born in July 1975 in Boston, Massachusetts, came from a well-known, well-to-do family. Thomas Walsh, his father, was a well-known neurologist who managed a department at one of the top hospitals in the state and taught at a prominent medical school from an early age. Brian embodied the stereotypical spoilt youngster, living a life of luxury and never having to say no. Despite his parents' best attempts to give him the greatest education possible, he had a comfortable life, wore branded clothing, and attended one of the top private schools. He did not continue his studies at any of the 3 elite universities his father had set him up to attend after high school. Brian was described by his contemporaries as shrewd, ruthless, and highly combative. In one way or another, he always managed to achieve what he desired. Brian was notorious for having an exceptional, bordering on compulsive drive for wealth and an opulent lifestyle, and he was very reluctant to give up his money. When he was younger, he frequently borrowed money from pals and never gave it back. When he was a college student, he would take his pals to the most opulent restaurants and, using a variety of ruses and deceptions, make sure that everyone paid his fair part of the tab. Brian had been cut off from his father for a long time. Following the unthankful son's fraudulent withdrawal of about $1 million from Dr. Thomas Walsh's personal account and his subsequent disappearance, the connection between the two became strained, leading to elder Walsh's death in 2018. When Brian refused to return the money freely, the father even attempted to convince him to do so. By the time of this heinous theft episode, Thomas had cut off all contact with Brian. The father chose not to denounce his son to the authorities. The father of Brian had another family and had long since decided to cut his eldest heir out of both his will and his life. Brian's parents were divorced, but as soon as Thomas passed away, Brian made himself known. He even filed a lawsuit saying that the doctor's widow and younger children had falsified the will in order to deprive him of his rightful fortune. He could not, of course, prove anything or claim any portion of the estate. In addition, many who knew Brian characterized him as violent and impulsive, hungry, cunning, and extremely vicious. He was violent when he got angry and accomplished everything by force. Brian was reportedly officially diagnosed with sociopathy in the late 2000s while receiving therapy in a mental health facility in an effort to control his outbursts of rage. It was an incredibly strange love tale. When in 2014, Anna was employed by the Wheatley Hotel in Massachusetts as a senior reservation manager. She was married to Marcus O'Neill at the time, who worked there as well. Among the guests in the hotel was Brian, who was instantly captivated by the pretty young lady. Walsh was not at all discouraged by Anna's previous marriage. He started paying her more and more attention. He was used to getting his way from an early age and could not take being rejected, so he started pursuing Anna nonstop. He was able to get her home location and phone number, which allowed him to completely ruin her and her husband's life. The O'Neills were forced to call the police in 2015 in order to get protection from Brian's constant harassment, which continued day and night. He contacted Anna at work, texted her on her personal phone, and insisted that she leave her husband in order to be with him. He pursued Anna nonstop. When Walsh threatened to hurt Anna and her husband if she did not go with him, the situation became more heated. It's unknown what happened next, or why Anna changed her mind in the end. But a year after asking Brian for police protection, she suddenly got separated from O'Neill. Furthermore, Brian became her second legally wedded husband a few months later. The newlyweds moved into an opulent house in an affluent neighborhood of Cohasset, Massachusetts, which is roughly 20 miles southeast of Boston. They quickly welcomed 3 sons into their marriage. The boys were 6, 4, and 2 years old when their mother vanished. Anna continued her upward career trajectory by taking on the role of regional general manager at Tishman Speyer, a real estate company, where she earned a high salary and effectively became the family's primary breadwinner. She did not consider taking maternity leave and managed to balance work and motherhood. She bought a second house in Washington, D.C., which was registered in her name, and used it as a place to stay when on business trips because her employment required her to travel there frequently. She depended on visiting nannies to assist her in taking care of her kids during these times. But what was the head of this huge family doing, Brian Walsh, the defendant in the fraud case against him, while his wife was growing their family and advancing her career? The $1 million he had once embezzled from his father was disappearing, and his wife had wisely registered everything she bought in her name. Before he married Anna, Brian actively looked for easy ways to make money. He had lived in South Korea for a while and became friends with a very affluent person whose family had a sizable collection of fine art. Brian kept up this relationship after coming back to the States, and his friend contacted him impromptu for assistance in selling multiple paintings by the renowned artist Andy Warhol. Brian enthusiastically consented, but made the decision to actually make money off of the sale, rather than just sell the artworks for a commission. A collection of abstract paintings was at his disposal. The brilliant artist, whose work is collectively dubbed Shadows, evaluated each painting, acquired the required paperwork, such as authenticity certificates, and then made copies of the pictures and the supporting records. Walsh reached out to painters who were able to replicate the paintings exactly. He persuaded the artists that since the original pieces were each valued at about $250,000, he required these duplicates as a backup. The con artist effectively replicated and marketed counterfeit paintings to international collectors for a number of years. But eventually, one of his purchasers, an art specialist with a focus on Andy Warhol's oeuvre, spotted a fake and filed a lawsuit against the con artist. After the FBI took up the investigation, the suspect entered a guilty plea to selling fake artwork in April 2021. After his attorney worked out a settlement that required him to give the buyers the money from the painting's sale in order to avoid serving time in jail, Brian was put under house arrest. Although his movements were severely limited, he was nevertheless permitted to leave his home twice a day. He was able to transport his kids to and from school by car. In addition, he had 2.5 hours in the morning to shop for needs in his neighborhood at pharmacies, dry cleaners, and other establishments. The Walsh family was getting ready to celebrate the start of a new year together in the comfort of their home when on December 31, 2022, Mrs. Walsh vanished mysteriously. That day, their sons, being quite little, left Anna and Brian at the dinner table and went to bed early. So Anna sent her final message on social media, wishing everyone a happy new year and vaguely mentioning that although it had been a difficult year, she and her husband were still together. January 3rd was Anna's flight date to Washington, D.C. for employment. However, on January 4th, her employer, Tishman Speyer, filed a missing persons complaint with the police. She had missed a deadline, been absent from work, and her phone had not been reachable for a few days. Regardless of Speyer's conduct, her spouse also filed a missing persons report, voicing his worry at not being able to get in touch with her for a few days. Brian claims that January 1st was when he last saw Anna. He said that she had woken him up early in the morning, claiming that her employer had asked her to report earlier than expected due to some complications at work. Brian thought his wife left after that, went to the airport. But shortly, contradictions in the case surfaced. First of all, Anna hadn't canceled her flight booked for January 3rd, or bought, altered, or reserved a ticket for a flight on January 1st. Second, on January 1st or 3rd, she failed to show up at the airport. And finally, how did she get out of the house? She hadn't called for a cab, and her own car was still in the garage. Brian speculated that she might have hitched, although this was not a very plausible theory. Numerous doubts were generated by Brian's remarks and actions. His statements were contradictory, and he didn't appear to be too concerned about what was happening. After failing to get in touch with his children's mother for over 3 days, he reported her missing on the 4th day, following her workplace's inquiry and the suspect's arrest. Brian was seen as the main suspect from the beginning, but there was insufficient evidence to support his arrest or obtain a search warrant for their family home. With the homeowner's consent, they performed a quick inspection that turned up nothing. Brian claimed that he had been going to regular stores and taking care of household tasks over those 3 days, just like any other person. Verifying his assertions, though, proved to be challenging. Every time he left the house, he would forget his phone, which he claimed his elder kids frequently took to play games without asking. A public plea was broadcast on television on January 5th by the police, who included a picture of Anna and asked anyone with information on her whereabouts or destiny to get in touch with them right away. However, no witnesses came forward. The last person to have seen Anna was her husband, but he did not provide any leads, and Anna was not seen on any neighborhood cameras on the morning of January 1st, as if she had never left her house. The last phone calls Anna was known to have made were to her mother and sister on December 31st. Conversely, her spouse was noted to have left and returned multiple times, but his exact whereabouts could not be ascertained. Walsh's allegation of going to the grocery store was refuted. He wasn't seen at the store, and no footage of him driving was found. On January 8th, after his home was finally searched, Brian was arrested for making false statements and taken into custody for questioning at the station. It was then found that on January 1st, he had visited a hardware store in a different area that was not on the list of authorized places he could visit while under house arrest. He bought a lot of cleaning goods, plastic sheeting, duct tape, a mop with a bucket, and utility rags there for almost $500. He paid with cash, probably thinking that his presence would go unnoticed given the horrific finds made during the search in the family home. At first look, there appeared to be no unusual or strange items in the house. Everything was in its proper position, and there were no visible bloodstains or indications of a struggle. But when the police entered the basement, bloodstains were obvious everywhere, and among the old junk, a bloodied knife and saw that had been wrapped in towels had been buried earlier. Brian had acknowledged that he had gone to his mother's house on the opposite side of town on January 3rd. He said that he had broken the terms of his house detention because his mother's health was failing and she needed assistance with household chores. After the sad discoveries in the basement, the police thought the man might have gotten rid of evidence or body parts while traveling. Accordingly, every garbage can in the couple's neighborhood and on the path to his mother's house was examined. These searches turned up some information, including the discovery of numerous blood-stained towels resembling those in the Walsh's basement and a kitchen hatchet with dried blood traces. Any lingering concerns concerning Anna's death were eliminated when forensic examination proved that the blood on the towels, knife, hatchet, and saw in the basement belonged to the missing woman. From the Brian Walsh residence, police confiscated a tablet owned by the couple's eldest son and Mr. Walsh's laptop. Investigators were shocked to learn about the search history on these devices. Brian was actively looking up information on the best states for divorce in terms of property division on the internet weeks before his wife vanished. He also tried to find out if he could claim the second house in Washington, D.C. that was owned by Anna and was only registered in her name. This could have revealed the reason behind the tablet-related crime. At 4 a.m. on January 1st, the first question asked was, "How long does it take for a body to start decomposing?" Subsequently, there were almost 20 searches regarding various topics such as disposing of a body, cleaning blood traces, dismembering a body, identifying a body even with its teeth removed, the duration of DNA traces, and the possibility of charging someone even if the body was never discovered. He searched through all of this data on the tablet of his little child, the one he brutally dealt with. On January 3rd, Brian had already started looking up the conditions under which someone might inherit a missing person's belongings, even though his wife's body and any remains had not been discovered. On January 18th, Brian was legally charged with her murder. It was evident that he was confident he would escape punishment and was getting ready to claim the inheritance charges in trial on January 18th. Prosecutors contend that on January 1st, either deliberately or unintentionally, Brian killed his wife and then chose to dispose of her body in their home's basement by dismembering it. After that, he wrapped the body pieces in plastic and over the course of the next few days, threw them in garbage cans located throughout the city. A thorough search was conducted for evidence in and around the Walsh residence, as well as in the surrounding region for several miles. They also investigated nearby woodland regions, wastelands, and bodies of water, but they were unable to find anything. In addition to entering a not guilty plea, the defendant withheld his actions regarding the body. It was also disclosed that Anna had been experiencing unhappiness lately and had even thought about divorcing her husband. The day before she vanished, she brought up this subject multiple times over the phone with her mother and sister. She asked her mother over the phone to take a short flight out of Serbia. Her mother chose to reschedule her visit, seemingly not taking her daughter's advice seriously. Brian Walsh's trial is still going on. In anticipation of his upcoming court date, the accused is presently being detained at the Norfolk Correctional Facility. The Serbian Ministry of Foreign Affairs has gotten in touch with the consulate in New York, which has then gotten in touch with the Norfolk District Attorney's Office to make sure Anna's mother is kept informed about the investigation and hearings in a timely manner. Anna's mother has been following the investigation from her home as she has not traveled to the United States. The three sons of the Walshes are currently in the state's custody because of Anna's mother's advanced age and deteriorating health. Also, none of Brian's family members want to care for them. Her sister, who is currently residing in Canada, has also denied to accept her nephews. Pamela Barden, a close friend of Anna's, is the only one who has indicated that she would be willing to take the boys in, rather than splitting them up and placing them in different foster homes.